Yeah. Well, greetings, folks. Welcome to the Source Service Scholar Student Information Session. My name is Keilah Jacques, and I am one of the assistant directors at Source.
And my name is Tony Bridges. I'm also an assistant director at Source, and we are both the co-facilitators for the Source Service Scholars Program.
That's right. So in our time together, we're going to spend a little bit of time getting you up to speed on what the SSS program is and how it works. We'll give you some example projects and how they can show up for academic credit for you all who are MPH students and you need practicum hours. We will talk about student responsibilities versus preceptor responsibilities, and a little bit about the application before opening the floor for questions. So let's get going. So a little bit of background on the SSS program. This is one of our long-term community partnership opportunities for students. So as a student, you would work with a community-based organization for an entire academic year, starting as early as August and ending at the end of the academic year in May. You complete 150 hours in that time. And we'll talk a little bit about what it looks like to complete 150 hours with a community-based organization, especially now that we are virtual. We'll talk a little bit about what it means to work with your preceptor as well, but you should also know that you are not required to be present at the CBO location. This is the first year in the history of this program, and it's been running for 8 years now, that we have 100% online opportunity for students to work with CBO partners for the academic year. So know that this opportunity is open to all students. We'll talk a little bit about how it can work, serve as a dual purpose for MPH students in particular, but it's open to all students across the 3 health professional schools that we serve. So the schools of public health, nursing, and medicine, all majors. And this is an opportunity for you to engage your peers. So the great thing about working as a project manager versus an intern on a project like this, which we'll illuminate shortly, is you get to involve other students in completing this project. In the past, it's looked a lot of different ways, but we'll talk to you about some of the ways that you can make virtual volunteer opportunities available to your peers. And for this program, you have to involve at least 4 folks, which isn't terribly hard. We even help you do that. So the great thing about moving into this year-long space is you don't do it alone. You're a part of an amazing cohort, and this cohort is facilitated in some skills development and learning by Tony and I. We meet regularly through academy sessions to help you understand things like cultural humility, volunteer management, the difference between an intern and a project manager, and some project management skills. We practice critical reflection and teach you how to teach your peers to operate in critical reflection connected to service work and in other spaces. We also walk you through service learning theory and practice. The center hinges its work, both curricularly and co-curricularly, on this pedagogy, this approach to partnering with community-based organizations to enhance learning. And so we orient you to that as well, because it becomes the foundation of how you show up with community partners. And then on top of that, we help you move through reporting your hours and reporting your outcomes, and we'll even guide you through making a digital version of a presentation at the end of the year that the organization can use and that we tend to use to draw in more students. You can see some of those on our website. The other thing to note is that you are connected to either Tony and I as an advisor. So we provide one-on-one consultation on everything from designing your work plan, recruiting volunteers, even navigating some of the assignments that are connected to the academy session, which is our academic component to this program.
So let's talk about the projects and the academic component to the program as well. So just keep in mind that for the projects, you will be paired with a community-based organization. If you were on the call earlier, you heard that we work with over 100 community-based organizations in the East Baltimore community. A lot of these organizations, these nonprofits, really have projects that they've been trying to get up off the ground, and haven't had the bandwidth to actually move those projects. And so that's where the source service scholars come into play. And so the CBO has the development of the project already, but it's their role in the job to work with our scholars in really coming up with how to complete that project and move it into fruition, and to make sure that it's sustainable over the course of time. Once we actually, or once you actually are completed, have completed the program. So we select up to 15 source service scholars from our 3 professional schools. So not just the School of Public Health, we'll also have scholars from the School of Nursing as well as the School of Medicine. And we try to make sure that we have 5, 5, and 5. So 5 from each of the professional schools. This program is not designed to bring students on as interns. You are project managers. And as Keilah mentioned, we'll help you go through the process of understanding what it means to be a project manager versus what it means to be an intern. Now, I'll tell you, we've worked with the community-based organizations, we've worked with the preceptors. They know that you are going to be a project manager, but there are times when they'll think of you as an intern. And so throughout the process, throughout the academic year, we talk to you about how to navigate that and make sure that you are working as a project manager and not as an intern on the projects that are needed for these programs. So let's talk about that for a second. What is an intern versus a project manager? Most of the time, and you know you've worked as an intern before, you assist with programmatic things that the organization may need. Sometimes they might ask you to do general tasks like filing or putting things away or even answering phones. That's not what you're supposed to do as a project manager. Project managers work on a specific project from beginning until completion. And there are different ways that will guide you to work on those projects. But the ways that you work on those really don't involve you moving outside of what you've been asked to do with that specific project. You are there to make sure that you have a final deliverable for the organization once the program is over. You also have to bring in volunteers to move the project to completion. You're required to bring in up to 4 volunteers that we'll talk about soon, and come up with a project plan and strategy to move this project to completion. So this is really specific to the things that you need to do for the specific program or community-based organization that you're working for. And so you won't be asked to move away from the things that are designed in that program. You'll be required to work on that specific project and not to take on other tasks that sometimes those organizations, unfortunately, may ask you to do. So just keep in mind that you can use this project for academic credit. You can use it as either a practicum or a capstone, and even for School of Medicine, it's used as a scholarly concentration in some instances. So for us, we work hand in hand with the practicum office. And so we are part of that team where we can work with you to make sure that if you are going to use this as an academic credit for your practicum or even your capstone, we're going to work with you to register for the source practicum for those special credits. Let's talk about some project examples. And keep in mind, these will slightly change because we're working in this virtual world now. And so the examples that you see may not seem to be virtual, but don't worry, the projects are definitely virtual, and we'll help you to get to that virtual thinking when it comes to the project. But some project examples, I think last year, if you were on the call this morning, you heard about Project Place. Project Place actually used this first project example, where it was the implementation of a health-related curriculum. And so the role of the scholar versus the role of the volunteers that you use are very different. Your role as a scholar is to maybe, for Project Place, it was different, but if you're going to implement a health-related curriculum, it could be to develop a plan to examine nationally recognized or evidence-based curriculum, right? For Project Place, what they were trying to do is institute a health workshop program. And so the role of the scholar may be to reach out to volunteers, to help with surveys and do curriculum reviews, and to build that curriculum based on the feedback. Whereas the role of your volunteer is slightly different, right? And so you're using that volunteer to examine the curriculum plan. You can use that person to research the best practices, compile surveys, and do the things that outside of your project management, your project, you may have volunteers to assist you in doing. And so the role of the scholar is very defined, and the role of the volunteer is also very defined. And you can use that volunteer in different ways. You can also use them in one of the ways that they use Project Place. They help the person that was the volunteer help to really host the workshop that they were trying to put together. And so you can think outside of the box in terms of how you use your volunteers. These aren't necessarily in stone with the way that you need to use your volunteers, but the project is what's really etched in stone. Another example may be community outreach. And so Be More for Kids is another organization that did pretty much community outreach as their scholarly program. And so they were doing research to develop a strategy to recruit volunteers to help with an after-school program. So they did the research, they developed a plan, but they also used their volunteers to conduct those informational interviews with businesses, nonprofits, or people to put on their potential partner list. And so these are ways that you can kind of use the volunteer versus your role as the scholar. Let's see. In terms of advocacy, that's something that I like to talk about a lot. Outside of what I also do here at the School of Public Health, I'm also a state representative. And so we have people that are advocating for us at the statewide level all the time. And so the role of the scholar in terms of advocacy may be to develop a plan for advocacy or an awareness campaign. Identify events, locations, the strategy, all those things that you're putting together to advocate for the CBO or for the program that the CBO is trying to advocate for. But the volunteer could be doing something very different. You know, one of the things that a volunteer or volunteers did last year was a social media takeover for the campaign that they were trying to put together. And so you can have volunteers take over your social media or work the event to hand out materials, pick up food, some of the grunt work. And again, this is all virtual. And so we'll work with you to think outside of the box for what your volunteer can do, because they can also conduct the outreach that can be done in the home, by phone, by email. It doesn't all have to be going outside or working with the CBO and working with people one-on-one. This can be done virtually. And so we just need to keep that in mind as you look at the opportunities that we've come up with and the CBOs have come up with, so that you can understand what the role of your volunteers may be versus your role putting together and developing the plan or the project that the CBO has identified for you. Another thing could be the service extension of an organization. And so this is, how do you extend the service of that organization? It may be to design a volunteer recruitment event with high school service learning volunteers. And so in Baltimore City specifically, a requirement for high school seniors is to have a certain amount of service learning hours before they graduate. And so it could be developing a training for those high school volunteers, a reflection activity that, is, if you listen to the earlier session, it's one of the things that we talk about constantly over and over again, how to do a reflection. And we actually train all of our scholars on how to do a reflection. You may be training your volunteers on how to coordinate a reflection. Your volunteers may be helping with calling the local schools to coordinate different opportunities or even working the orientation. And so the role of the scholar is really to develop, design, and help to move forward with the implementation. But the role of volunteer is really to help you or to assist you in making sure you get to that ultimate final planning stage so that the actual project can be sustained. And so there's a number of things that we can work with you to make sure that the volunteer does versus what you're doing, which is really that implementation design stage. There are a number of certain expectations that our CBOs or the preceptors are expected to do as well, right? And so one of the things that we do, we're really strategic in how we bring on our CBOs in those projects. And we want to make sure that in the time that you have, those 150 hours, you have a really good project that you're working on. And sometimes we know with a lot of our nonprofits, they sometimes may change the people that are in charge or the people that are working with you. So we require that there are 2 points of contact from those organizations that are working with you to complete this program. There's also a source online preceptor module that they have to take to make sure that they understand, the role that they have in making sure that they're working with you in a right way for you to be a project manager versus an intern. They're also there to supervise you and to help you with recruiting the volunteers over the term of the project. And we help you with that as well. And so there are a number of ways that we can assist you, whether it's doing things online through our school or reaching out to some of our contacts. We will help you to make sure that you can also recruit volunteers. In recruiting volunteers, you must establish regular and frequent meetings with your CBO, or the CBO must establish those meetings with you regarding the progress on your project. And so we require you to meet with them at least once or twice in the beginning of the year before January, and then again twice before the end of the year. Now, you should meet with them much more than that if you can, but you're at least required to meet with them those 4 times over the course of the year as you're completing that project. They're there to give you guidance, to make sure that you're working in lockstep and that you understand what's going on with their project. And in turn, you and your expertise is helping them to push that project along. The ultimate goal is to make sure that the project is sustainable at the end of the academic year. And so whether you're there at the end of the academic year, somebody else comes on and has to move forward with the project, you have put together a sustainable project that can live well beyond your time with the organization. We also ask that the CBOs complete a mid-year and a final evaluation regarding this project. We do that for a couple of different reasons. One, mid-year, we want to make sure that things are moving along. You understand what they're doing, they understand what you're doing, and if there are any things that we need to change mid-year, we can do that. The final evaluation is to help us for the next year, to make sure that as the year progressed, you did the right things that you were supposed to do to move the project along, and they did the right things so that we can help the next cohort that comes on for the following year. They're also there to make sure that your service hours are logged, and so that you have those 150 years that if you become a source service scholar, we will talk to you about constantly to make sure that you are tracking your progress over the course of an academic year. And finally, they're there to remain flexible and reasonable with what you're doing. We understand, they understand that sometimes things change, and they need to be flexible with their expectations on how things get done, especially in living in this virtual world that we're living in right now. They need to be flexible, and we need to be flexible on how we do things moving forward. And so they understand that expectation, and they're there to assist you. There are also certain expectations for our students as well, right? You have to attend our academy sessions. Their academy sessions are not like every month. There are certain times of the year when we do the academy sessions, and we expect you to be there because those academy sessions are really important, not just to learn from us, but to learn from your peers. And so we do a lot of engagement as a group to talk about lessons learned, the things that you're doing, the things that you may have some issues with that you never know. One of your other scholars may also have that issue. And so we try to work with you to figure out how, as a group, if anybody has this issue, we can all work together to make sure that nobody has this issue moving forward. We also expect you to complete reflections and reading assignments associated with the academy sessions, in addition to building on the project work plan with your preceptors. And again, Keilah and I will check in with you to make sure that if you have any issues with your project plan, if things aren't coming along the way that you think they should be coming along, we'll work with you on that project plan and make sure that as you're reading the assignments, you understand how those assignments actually go along with the work that you're doing with your projects. Again, you've got to report those hours regularly. I tell you, we will ingrain in you from the very beginning that we need you to track those hours. We want you to get to the 150 hours or more, if possible, at the end of the academic year. But the 150 hours are required as part of the program. We'll work with you to engage those 4 volunteers. And in the past, we have had more than people that have engaged more than 4 volunteers for their program. And so if there are more than 4 volunteers that you can actually utilize throughout the program, we'll help you to make sure that those volunteers, you're tracking and engaging those 4 or more volunteers. We expect you to meet regularly with your advisors throughout the cohort year with Keilah and I, in addition to making sure that you're coming to our in-person or now virtual sessions, so that we understand what you're going through. In addition, during that one-on-one setting, if there are concerns that you may have or things that we may not have talked about in that virtual session, we can kind of talk about those things at that point and help you to move forward or progress so that you can complete the project. And we expect you to meet with your preceptor. And so the preceptors already understand that your time is limited, and their time is limited as well. But we have to make sure that you are on the same page with your preceptor as you're moving along with those projects. And the same thing for the mid-year and final evaluation, right? We understand that sometimes things change. You may not be feeling the way that your project is coming along. And, if those changes need to be made, we look at those evaluations during the mid-year and the final evaluation to make sure that you are having a really good experience. And the next cohort that comes in additionally has the same level of experience, or we want them to have even better experience every year moving forward. So just a few tips. As you complete the application, just keep in mind that you can look through the application. There'll be more than one project, obviously. You can select up to 3 projects for your application. So if there are 3 different projects that you think you may be a good fit for, please make sure you fill out the application for all 3 projects. We look for in your application those skills, those previous work experiences, the things that you've done in the past that will make you a really good candidate for the project. And so we do our best to try to match your skill set and your background up with a project that we think would fit you from the 3 projects that you listed in your application. And the last thing is you must be admitted and registered for courses in the 3 professional schools in order for your application to even be considered. And so, I think that goes without saying, but make sure that you are admitted for those courses in order to be part of the Source Service College program.
Thanks, Tony. You did a great job. And I just want to use this moment to allow 2 things to happen. 1, to give folks an eye break. We recognize that Zoom is the way forward and looking at our screens can be straining. So look away from the screen as I do the second thing, which is respond to questions that have already come in the chat. If you happen to think of a question after you're taking your eye break, feel free to drop that in the chat and we'll make space to respond. So just look away from the screen and listen as I respond to these first couple of questions. The first question is about being an international student. So first, before I even read the question, I want to say, international students, you are welcome to apply for this program and receive the stipend. You do not have to be a student who is a citizen to be a part of this program. We welcome international students to apply and you will be eligible for the stipend going through this program. If you, as this question indicates, are a 100% online student and you're not required to do a practicum, you can still apply to this program. So this program is not restricted to folks who need some type of academic credit for their service opportunity. If you're just really interested in applying your skills, applying the things that you've learned previously or are learning currently to addressing issues and problems with community-based organizations here in Baltimore, and you're passionate about a particular topic or population, we welcome your application as well. So that answers those 2 parts of that question. And then the next part of the question is about the requirements. So Tony's just gone through some of the really salient requirements for all students, even our international students. 150 hours, you must engage 4 volunteers. Those 4 volunteers must come from the health professional school. And outside of that, you're welcome to engage more volunteers who don't have to be students within the health professional programs. You have to meet with your advisor. You have to meet with your preceptor. You have to manage your project to completion. Those are all of the things that are required alongside of the academy session. So if you're doing those as an international student and we're all operating in this virtual space together, you're meeting the requirements of the program. I think that is all the questions that we have. But as I said, keep the questions pouring in and we will respond to them as we go. I want to take a moment and walk you through the timeline. There is a process for this application that's very intentional. And so I want to walk you through it. And that way you're very aware of what you're getting into. So the first thing to note is that application is open today. You can go to our website, you can check out the Source Service Scholar program underneath the student tab and get more information on past scholars and past projects, but you will also find the link for the application and the link for the projects. Take a look at those projects, figure out which ones you're interested in, up to 3, and complete the application online. Once you've done this by the deadline, which is August 5th, we will take a step and review all of the applications. And as Tony said, identify which is the best fit based on your experience, based on the interests that you have, based on similar projects perhaps that you've done other places. After you've completed this step of submitting your application, you're waiting to hear from our team on which projects you will interview for. We will match you with preceptors and give you the opportunity to interview with those preceptors because it is our preceptors who will decide who they move forward with partnering with for the entire academic year. So from the 5th through the 7th, our team will review your applications. From the 10th through the 20th, you have a 10-day window to complete up to 3 interviews with community-based organizations. You share your rank, your top 3 with us. The CBOs will share their top 3s, and we will try to match you as close to your top choice as possible. I will be honest and say we lean into the preference of our preceptors. And if you are awarded the opportunity to join the cohort, we send you a message welcoming you in. Now, I will say this process, this is round 2 for us. In the spring of every year, we open round 1 for existing students. So there are a small group of students who have already started summer academy sessions. We have recorded those sessions. We'll make them available to you along with the Course Plus, where you can engage with the reflective activities and conversations with students in the cohort, digital conversations with students in the cohort about key readings and the content of those academy sessions, right? So then you move forward with developing your plan, your work plan with your preceptor, and moving forward in the project management stage of completing the program. You do that through May, and then in April, we celebrate the end of the program. You make a presentation on the things that you've completed in partnership with your community-based organization, and we give you an opportunity to see what other students have done through their digital presentation. And as I said, our website contains the ones that we our students recorded last year. So that's kind of an overview of what's to come and this process of moving from interest through completing the program. It sounds super simple, super straightforward, right? I'm sure everybody's going to apply tomorrow. Maybe not. But I also recognize that there are some questions that frequently come up. So Tony and I are going to walk through some frequently asked questions.
So Keilah, if you don't mind, I'll ask the questions. And if you can answer those questions, I would be very much appreciative.
You've got it, Tony.
So the first question is, how and when will my $17.50 stipend be distributed?
You're all about the Benjamins, aren't you, Tony?
I am.
Yeah, well, let me break this down. Our students receive $1,750 as a full stipend, and we divide providing that stipend in 2 stages. So the first stage will be in December, right before you head out to winter break. We give you a little pocket money for winter break. And then again in April at the end of the program is when you get the second half. But there are stipulations. I mentioned the requirements, right? So you have to attend all the academy sessions. You must submit your hours. It's the only way for us to know that you're making progressive motion and completing your mid-year evaluation and report. These are all ways for us to know that you are moving your project forward, along with meeting with Tony and I at least once a month. So those things help us indicate that you are making strides on your project and that we should release the funds in 2 ways.
And I will say that making sure that you are tracking and reporting your hours is really important. And so from the very first academy session until that first installment in December is due, we'll be asking you to make sure that you are tracking. That's one of the things that we try to do to make sure that you will be able to get that first installment.
Yeah, we actually pull a report, and that report indicates who does and who doesn't get the first installment. We also ask that you are ensuring that your volunteers track their hours, and that also helps us decide who's ready to receive their pocket money.
So another frequently asked question, can I continue as a scholar after the academic year ends?
So here's the great thing about this program. We facilitate your partnership with this community-based organization for the entire academic year, but we don't restrict it. So when the program ends, you're no longer a part of the cohort, but you are more than welcome to continue to work with your community-based organization to move the project forward or to work on something different. We've had lots of students really fall in love with the organizations and show up in different ways. Some of them even secured jobs. So we definitely encourage you to continue to work with the organization if it strikes you, but know that for the program, you're only required to work with them through the end of the academic year.
Thank you. Another question, when will I be assigned a source staff advisor? How often will I have to meet with my advisor?
Tony and I love this question because we love supporting our scholars move their projects to completion. So you receive connection to either Tony or I as soon as you're admitted into the program. And we go through the summer assignments, right? You are assigned to Tony or I, and you set the date, time, and location of your meetings with us, but we ask that you meet with us at least once a month. It allows us to, one, make sure that you're okay. We do want to make sure that you're well. That is a part of the advising role, but also that your project is making progressive motion and that there's no stalling as you just get used to the new flow of life on top of doing your schoolwork, right? So we're checking in to make sure that you're well, but also that the project is well, and once a month at least allows us to do that.
Thank you. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there are some service academy sessions that people have to attend. There aren't many, but do I have to attend all of those service academy sessions, Keilah?
Yes. Yes, you do. And I know that we live in the world of Zoom and there are lots of demands on our time, energy, space. So we give you all of those dates up front, much like the very detailed timeline that I just went through. We will give you all the dates and times of the academy sessions. They tend to be in the evenings. So from 5 to 8, one Wednesday a month. We do 3 months in the fall and 2 months in the spring. So like Tony said, it's not every single month. And we'll give you those dates and you can go ahead and plug those into your calendar. Now, life happens, technology challenge happens, things happen. So as long as you're in communication with Tony and I, when something happens, we can help you move forward with the content that you've missed in the academy session, but it is required that you engage with the academy sessions every single time they're offered.
Thank you for answering that. Got another question. There's this program called the Community Outreach Program at the School of Nursing. Is that program and the Source Service Scholar Program the same program, or are they separate?
Thank you so much for asking this question, because here at Source, we have lots of really amazing programs and some of them sound kind of similar. So COP is a separate program altogether. It is actually a course that all nursing students are required to take, and they are connected to a community-based organization for an entire year. However, they show up as volunteers and not project managers. They're not required to design a project, to plan that out and move the project from start to finish and engage volunteers in the same way that Source Service Scholars are. They also do not receive a stipend. So that, again, is a class. It's only for nursing students. It's required for all incoming nursing students, and that's what makes it different. Awesome. So we have had a couple of questions come in via the chat. I'm going to read those out, and then Tony, you and I can take turns addressing them. How does that sound?
Okay, let's do it.
So, here's our first question. Can we complete 150 hours anytime between August and May at our convenience? And can we get more information about the projects, applications, etc.? And if so, where?
So I can, one of the things that we'll do is put the link in the chat for where you can find the project applications. But in terms of completing the 150 hours anytime between August to May, yes, you can. And so keep in mind that you are not required to be on site with the community-based organization right now because things are virtual. And so the one thing that we talked about that we require is that you track those hours. And so if you're sitting in front of your computer doing work, and spend an hour or two doing that work, hey, well, that's part of the hours that you spent on that project plan. So yes, you can spend that time between now and the end of the program at your convenience, getting that 150 hours and completing your program.
Thank you, Tony. I think I'll take this next question. It reads, as a MSPH student, I won't register for classes until the very end of August. Would this impact my application? Great question. So as long as you're admitted and you can show us the courses that you'll register for, you shouldn't be impacted. You can still move forward with your application. It's been our experience in the past that we move a student into the interview process. They were all the way to the end. They were awarded the opportunity to be a part of the Source Service Scholar cohort, and then they withdrew their application because they did not have the funds to attend the university and did not receive scholarship money. So we're trying to preempt the time spent, one by you, but also by our preceptors, of building relationships and rapport, moving all the way through the interview process, and then not actually being able to pair the organization with the student. So that's one of the reasons that we ask for that information, and it allows us not to be exclusive, but to be really intentional with our CBO partners' time and with yours. Okay, Tony, I have another question for you.
Go ahead.
You ready? So what if you're not chosen to be a scholar? Are there still other opportunities to get involved with Source or to be a volunteer with any of the projects?
Oh my goodness, that is a great question. If you are not chosen to be a scholar, there are a ton of opportunities to get involved in Baltimore's communities. One, we are always going to encourage you to sign up for our school. Scoop right now goes out twice a week. It's a newsletter that highlights engagement opportunities in the Baltimore community for students, staff, and faculty who want to be involved. And so we'll always list any other opportunities to be involved in the Baltimore communities in our school. There are also a number of ways that you can be involved in different programs just by working with Source. And so there's a community consultants, there are Baltimore Action Projects. There are a number of ways that, in addition to being a Source Service Scholar, you can get involved. We also do service learning activities. And so during Baltimore Week in October and during Volunteer Week, we have a tri-school day of service where we work with from 6 to 8 community-based organizations in the community for one-day service learning opportunities. And so that may be, if you were on the call this morning, to work with Amazing Grace Lutheran Church, and they have a labyrinth garden. You can help them with weeding the garden. You can help them with putting things on the shelf for their food pantry. There are at least 6 organizations that we work with on our tri-school day of service that you can also get involved with. And so there will be a ton of opportunities for you to get involved. And a lot of those opportunities you'll most likely be working with me on. And so stay tuned with the scoop. And also, if you want to reach out to me directly, we'll put our information at the end, and we can make sure that even if there's not an opportunity for you to be involved in the Source Service Scholars, we will be able to provide you with another opportunity.
Thanks so much, Tony. So there's another question. I think I'm going to take this question. It says, on the application, do the CBOs propose their own projects completely fleshed out, or do we help them design a project that fits their needs? I like this question because it allows us to get into the very intentional ways that we work with community-based organizations. So you don't have to show up to this opportunity by researching our organizations and coming up with a project for them. We've already spent time through our relationship management identifying projects with our community-based organization that they've indicated they need. The step for you is to design a work plan for bringing that communication to fruition. So no, you don't have to create a project, the CBO has already identified the project that they need. You do have to create a plan on how that project will be completed. And we help you do that. And then you administer the plan. You don't have to do all the steps. That's why you have volunteers. You get to divvy up steps and different elements, and they help you complete those steps, which is what makes it different from being an intern. As a project manager, you design a project and you delegate tasks within that project so that the project moves to completion. All right, we have a few more questions, Tony. So this one is coming to you. What kind of project management / internship background do successful applicants demonstrate?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So in addition to on your application, let me just reiterate, that's one part of the process, right? And so it's great if you have that project management internship background that you can identify and highlight, but it also helps when you get involved in terms of having that interview with the CBO, that you present the things that you've worked on that you may not have highlighted, because applications are limited. And so there's a certain amount of information that you can actually give in your application. But once you get on the phone with that preceptor, that CBO, I think it's really important that you talk about your background and things that you've done. And I think that as you have that conversation, your preceptor may ask more questions because they're really interested in the things that you say about your background and your experience, and they may want you to elaborate on that more. And so I think it's good that you put as much of a highlight on the things that you've done on the application. But I think it's as equally or maybe even more important that when you do have that interview, when you're talking to that preceptor, to really highlight the things that they want you to expose about your background and your experience. And so there's no sort of cookie cutter system to, what you put on your application and what you say in your interview. But I think that the more that you discuss the things that are on your application with the person that you're assigned to interview with, you really bring that information out and talk about your background to the point that you couldn't do on a regular application.
That is a great answer and a great question. Thanks for that, Tony. I'll just add to that. If you have ideas on how to complete the project, put that in your application. If vision what managing that project and what the work plan might look like, putting that, expressing that, articulating that in your application also shows that you're a really great candidate, whether you've done exact work like that or not. The ability to articulate how you could show up with the organization is a really great way to sell yourself and the opportunities that you're willing to champion with the organization. So there are a couple of questions that have come in that I'm going to combine in order to move us quickly through time. One in particular is asking about projects that are designed for students with a particular skill set and non-scholar opportunities counting for practicum. So I'm going to kind of combine the answers because I feel like there is the ability to really relay the information quickly. So you can apply to any projects that are of interest to you. You're not restricted based on your skill set. And like Tony said, if you have some experience, that's a really great way to market yourself. And if you have ideas on how to move the project to completion, that's a really great way to market yourself. So if you see one of these opportunities that align to something that you are working towards learning at the Bloomberg School, and you perhaps don't have that skill set yet, it's totally fine for you to apply to that. Whichever 3 spark your interest, you can apply to those. And if you have a specific skill set and you think, oh yes, community garden volunteer management, I've done that before. I can definitely do this project. You are welcome to apply to that one too. You can get credit for any project that you move forward in as a scholar for practicum, but you're not required to. So again, it's any students who are interested in these projects can apply to them. And those who need practicum credits, capstones, you can use this to accomplish that, but you're not required to. So I hope that that's really clear about like skill set and then opportunity to use this project for academic credit. Tony, I'm going to send you this question. How often do the application periods open? And can I apply for this at the start of the academic year, or do applications only open between the academic year?
Yeah, that's a good question. And so, as Keilah mentioned earlier, this is our second round of applications. And so we do 2 rounds of applications. It's not a rolling admission sort of application. We do one for current students and then one for new students enrolling. And so the second application starts now and will stay open for the next month, ending on August 22nd. Right, there you go. And the first round is already closed. And so with the first round, we opened that, or we closed that back in, oh my goodness, the days are just running in
like March.
April. March.
Yeah.
So keep in mind, we do 2 rounds of applications. The first round is already closed. The second round is for new students that are currently enrolling, so that we can also give you that opportunity to be involved with the Source Service Scholars Program.
These are really great questions. Thank you to everyone who sent questions in. That's actually the end of the questions that we have. And you know what? It puts us right at 10:02, which is one of the things that we've been advised to do in facilitating virtual spaces, is give people time. So the 10 minutes is spot on. The final things to share with you: applications are now open. So the link is in the chat. We'll drop it once again. It'll be open until August 5th. So if you need some time to review things, ask more questions, reach out to Tony and I, or see this really awesome marketing campaign. Shout out to Azat Shahide, who's managing that. That includes stories from past scholars and experiences from past scholars. Before you make up your mind, you have some time. And once applications close, we'll be in touch to let you know if we've moved to the next stage, which is interviews.
So thank you all for being on our Zoom today. I see there's one final question that came in.
Go for it, Tony.
If you are not accepted now, can you apply again in the following cycle? Absolutely. You can apply again in the following cycle as long as you're still enrolled. There will be a new round of applications, a new round of projects that our CBOs, there may be some CBOs, maybe 1 or 2 from the last cohort, or they may be all new CBOs with all new projects. We try to make sure that we have new community-based organizations. And one of the things that we didn't mention is sometimes we also have student groups that also have projects. So there are a number of student groups from each of the professional schools that also have projects that they're trying to move forward, and they'll be part of the next cohort as well. And so, yes, if you are not accepted now, you can apply again in the following cycle. And with that, unless there are other questions, again, Keilah and I are looking forward to reviewing the applications. And if you are selected to be a Source Service Scholar, we are looking so forward to working with you as being part of this next cohort in this new virtual world that we're living in, to see how we can actually navigate this new way of thinking about community engagement and working with our community-based organizations.
That's right. It's the way of the future. So thanks, everyone. Take good care.
Thank you.
Thank you both for leading the session.
Thank you for moderating, Azad.
Oh, anytime. Anytime. You got it.